Hello guys, Braxcast time once again. It is the 106th episode of the Braxcast and the fulfillment is finally starting. So I got the Isom Primeval action figures. I'll be going over those next week. I want a whole dedicated episode to that. But this is the Rippazine Extravagenza because not only do we have the 5th issue of the Rippazine fulfilled, also got the collection of all the Rippazine stories, which includes that preview of the short story by Zachary Levi. But that's not the only thing that's been going on this week. We did have one pre-order open, and this is pretty unique. This is Dirty Deeds Jailbreak by Carol Brown. This is, of course, a cover of the, or this is the hardcover. This will also be available as an EPUB because this is not a comic book. It's a 350-page full-length novel giving some backstory to the Dirty Deeds. So we're really excited to read this one. We're really excited to see what Carol's cooking with these characters, and it'll be really cool to get some like deep lore because, of course, she's put a lot of thought into Dirty Deeds, and you see that with the short story. Of course, we've got that number 1, which it could be 10 issues, it could be just that one issue, depends where the fans take it. But really, really cool to be able to get in on a novel from the Rippaverse. Hopefully more of stuff like this happens. They're, of course, a lot lower cost to do than paying an artist to do commissions. And of course, they're a lot cheaper to print because you don't have to print on that high color paper, high quality paper with color ink. You can just do black and white. So it'll be really exciting to see Dirty Deeds Jailbreak. And like I said, this is, I think, more of an origin story for the Dirty Deeds crew rather than continuing where Dirty Deeds takes place in that short story, the Rippazine. I imagine where it would be in number 1. But like I said, this is the Rippazine Extravagenza. I don't want to bury the lead too much. We're going to start with the Rippazine collection. This is, of course, the first 5 stories of the Rippazine, and also has Unpack That by Zachary Levi. And that's really one I want to focus on here. Of course, you know, we've got this beautiful cover here from Kanan White. Of course, you got Spingy there in the corner, and I need to get better with remembering the names of Dirty Deeds. But this is the, pretty typical for a collection. This is a regular trade paperback. Looks absolutely beautiful. This is, of course, the salvage, and you can just flip through the entire story. Of course, you've got Blue Shift there, which is a fantastic story, but we get that when we get into the 5th issue of the Rippazine, because that's what we'll be going over. But what I want to show off is this short story here. So this is called Unpack That. So what we have right here, Unpack That by Zachary Levi, written by Carol Brown. Evan Scale is the artist, who is also the artist for Dirty Deeds. Does a fantastic job on this. And I do love, like, you got some aliens, you got some inmates, so it's a little bit of lore there. But what I want to really show off, and of course, you got Billy Bob Quinn at the end. But there is the story of Tobias Sworn. It continues in the all-new graphic novel Truthbound, coming out in late 2026. And this is a collaboration between Rippaverse Publishing and Nerd HQ. This is basically about mental health advocacy. That's the nonprofit, which, while that's all well and good, that's not really what I want to focus on too much. I want to focus on the fact that we're getting a graphic novel coming out in late 2026 called Truthbound, and it's going to be carrying on Tobias Sworn's story. And of course, that is I believe this is Tobias Sworn right here, so I don't even have to flip over to show that off. So really cool. That's the star, I would say, breakout from this. Is the reason why I bought this book. And of course, it's nice to just have all of these like in one collection. So if I want to reference any of the first like 5 issues, you can just do that instead of like looking through the Rippazine. So it's cool to do that as well. But that was the primary reason why I got that, was to read Unpack That. And I'm really excited for Truthbound because that was a really interesting one. But we do have the 5th issue of the Rippazine. It continues the Rippazine onslaught. Absolutely love this cover here. You got Blue Shift, Michael and Lillian. Of course, you got the pigeons in the background. It's not the collector's edition. I do have that as well, and I do have the graded copies, and I will show those off a little bit later. But this is a really nice splash page of Blue Shift's costume. And of course, you've got the table of contents here. And I do love the format of this. And what we have, and starting off with, is the Artist's Corner. This is Evan Scale, basically going how to draw combat scenes. It's a really, really interesting read. Does a really fantastic job of doing that, like breaking it down with visual examples. And then next, what we have is the short story for Blue Shift. And if you haven't read Blue Shift yet, Blue Shift tryouts, and you want to not be spoiled, then I would recommend skipping this part of the video or stop watching here, because I will be going over those spoilers, or I'll just be going into the story. So Blue Shift tryouts, fantastic story. You've got Eiji Souza as the artist. You've got, of course, Andrew Rodriguez as the writer, and he does a fantastic job of really just introducing the character of Blue Shift. And one of the things I do like is that there are little like teases here, especially on this page. You see his friend, I believe Ian, is wearing a Norfolk shirt. They're learning about the Great War separation in school, and then you've got like a pigeon there at the side. But this is basically just him getting transferred to a high school. He falls in love with a girl. You see, this is you can see Trinity right here. That's her name. She does introduce herself by another name. You know, she does say like, oh, you know, I'm someone else, like a Japanese name, and then she introduces herself as Trinity. So my working theory is that she has a relationship to Lillian Renashi. Maybe she's like a niece or like a second cousin or something like that. But that's just a theory for now. Who knows if that's true or not, but it's a fun thing to think of. And of course, you know, she's got the twin tail, she's got like the stockings. So it's a very like anime design, I would say. So this is basically going to be his love interest. This is why he goes off and says, hey, you guys should try out for track, him and his friend. So he tries out for track, and he basically is able to win. And we find out that he doesn't have the best control of their power, of his speedster powers, and can actually kill him. That's the interesting thing there. And of course, his parents are very, very on his case for doing that. So he does have a mother and a father. And this is something that in the interview, we'll get into the interview, he does mention having like an intact family unit is something that's sorely lacking in entertainment. And it's done quite well here. But this isn't like him going out and being Blue Shift and doing the crime fighting stuff. This is the very beginning of his story, basically. There is like some backstory to him, but this is the very beginning, especially if we get this, and I do think there should be an ongoing series where, you know, we see him go through college, where we go see him enter the workforce as like a 22-year-old. This is the beginning of that arc there, right? So absolutely fantastic job. It's a really simple story. It's very relatable. Of course, you got a high school kid trying to fit in, tries out for the sports team because he wants to impress a girl. These are things that are very, very understandable and relatable. So I do absolutely love seeing that. And of course, the implication is that his neighbor is going to be this Trinity who's got a lot of nice wardrobe choices. So it's something that Edu is going to have fun with. He gets to continue drawing her in like, you know, these like very nice outfits and such, right? So it's something I definitely want to see a lot more of in this story, or this basically this character, because I love Zephyr's character. Love the people he's surrounded with, and I love how you could have that really long arc where we started with him as being a high school kid to a college kid to a working adult, and trying to balance like living a normal life with, you know, the alter ego of being Blue Shift, which is a great name for a speedster. But that also translates into like this really cool like you know, like draw up here. You've got like, you know, her with like, you know, like a Chun-Li thing going on. So is she an accept? And then you've got, of course, all these other people. I believe like Ian might even have powers as well. So who knows what the future plans are for this character. I do really hope we see them. There's certainly like a lot here in Zephyr's story that we need to, I would say, an ongoing series would be really, really nice to have. It's something that would be 100% justified. Next, we've got a one-page comic. This is Pecking Order. I believe Andrew writes these, and then I think Igor Shakal is the drawer or is the artist of these. We can most likely check the Bird's Eye View number 5. Doesn't give the credits there, but I believe that's who does it. That's been who's ones who've been doing it. But like I said, that's a nice, fun little comic. And it has been for all the issues of the Rippazine, and I do like it being one page instead of just crammed into another page like it was in one of the past issues. But there are 2 interviews, so one by Andrew Rodriguez. This is a really nice, deep interview. I'm not going to read through all of it, but I definitely do like this one. It's absolutely fantastic. And it does show that Andrew's got a lot of thought and care into his writing process and the Rippaverse in general. Of course, like I hound him a lot because he drinks too much Franzia, but he definitely has a great mindset. He definitely is quite good at what he does. And I think Blue Shifts is a really good story, and he's got a really good mind. So that's why that happened. So if you read the Rippazine, I do recommend reading both of the Sasuke interviews. And of course, we've got the interview with Eiji Souza, which is a lot shorter. It's still very interesting. Of course, Souza is the artist for Blue Shift Tryouts. He also did a cover for Saints and Sinners, which is really, really cool. And then what we have for the final interview is an interview with MP Ratio. So we haven't seen MP Ratio shown off in any of the Rippaverse. So this is like new to the Rippazine. But this does give us some lore because if you read the previews, we know about Copper Records. So Copper Records is Michael Copper's label that he owns, and it's got this very corporate like reputation. That's a good word to use. So they're not part of Copper Records. They, in fact, just like Copper Who. So not being part of Copper Records is actually kind of like a status symbol and still being able to be really, really big. So this is like a K-pop group, some video game references. So there's definitely a character that Revolver Rick has. It's very much of being an interviewer, because when you interview somebody, you're not making it about yourself. Like as someone who's interviewed a couple of people, you're making it about the person you're interviewing. So you're trying to mute your personality and just ask the questions, and you're making yourself a vehicle for the person to talk about themselves. So, and that in itself is a skill that you have to build. And it means that your personality doesn't really shine through, but Revolver Ricks does have a little bit of personality, even in that context. So this is a really nice interview. It does give us a little bit of like lore hints, and I do hope we see MP Ratio showing up in the Rippaverse. It'd be cool if they showed up in Norfolka, because of course, their music involved, but they might show up in Black Eyed Club, considering, Copper Records. He might try and sign these girls like Ri Kai, Taewon, Yi Kyung. I'm probably butchering the names because I have no idea how to speak Korean, but you get my drift, is that he could try and Black Eyed Club #1 sign these girls to his label, and they say, no, we want to do our own thing, which, good for them. And then we've got a Catch and Kill corkboard. It's got like stuff for Isom. It's got stuff for Horseman. We see something with Cameron Cross. And then you've got like, I believe like Gooding here. So just very cryptic stuff. And of course, like a character, I believe it's an Isom #2. So really, really cryptic stuff. Of course, you can actually send letters to Winslow, which I actually might do because I like writing letters. So it might be a fun thing to do. Then you've got Lillian's Hot Tea and Gentleman Tips. The Gentleman Tips for Michael Copper are like Halloween based, so they kind of like missed the boat on this one. I guess they thought it was going to come out a little bit sooner than it actually did, or later, who knows. Lillian's Hot Tea is mostly about herself, so it's not like so much lore breaking stuff or really interesting lore stuff. I'd say what show we got in the interview with MP Ratio is a bit more interesting in terms of the lore implications, but I still like both of these, so I really hope these continue. These are definitely really fun. And then what's really interesting are the previews. So of course, Norfolk Glorious Death we already got. So that was not something that was too like breaking for me, but we got previews for Great War Separation #3, which starts with you've got Abu Dhabi, basically an Arab oil mogul, really lamenting the fact that Texas is going independent and having all these implications on the oil market, right? Which is really relevant politically with all the stuff that's going on with Strait of Hormuz and oil being like $110 a barrel. So Chuck Dixon really knows what he's doing with this, geopolitical stuff. Absolutely love it. It feels fantastic. Of course, you got this German Blitzer. And she's like speaking in German and basically blows up the like caravan that he's part of, or convoy, better term. We got a preview of Black Eye Club #1, and you've got this dead artist, so Abbey Roads, it's where we find out about Copper Records, and it just, like, as it's getting interesting, you get it to be cut off, like, which is quite nice, or not quite nice, but you want to read the rest of it. And this is especially true of The Curse #1, so this is in Tokyo, Neo, Japan. Beautiful, beautiful. This is, like, really fantastic art. Just seeing this fully colored, printed out is absolutely fantastic. And it's basically starting with her husband being murdered, and then just as it is, just as she's talking to the detective, it ends, and we don't have anything else after that. We got to wait for these books to come out, which that really frustrated me when I read that. I was like, oh man, I want to read the rest of it. It was just so good. I was really into it, and then it was over. But that is the 5th issue of the Rippazine, so they've got a really fantastic format set out so far. Absolutely love where they're taking this, how they're doing it. Hopefully we see more of it. And I would say probably removing a preview. So instead of having 4 previews, have only 3 previews, and use the page count you would get from removing that preview to put in, like, Harriet's, recipes, more stuff for the Forest Park Gazette, and make that a little bit meatier, because I prefer content like that than getting, like, tons of previews for books. So I think 3 previews, and then having a little bit more page count for, like I said, Forest Park Gazette, more interviews, fun stuff like that, is going to be more preferable for someone like me. Of course, if you're a new reader, then having more previews for books might be a better thing, but I still think, like, 3 previews is a good number, and I would have preferred if they cut out, like, Norfolka, and then they just put they beefed up the Forest Park Gazette a little bit more. But that is just my opinion. Still a great issue of the Rippazine. Love that this is continuing. Of course, #6 is something that is still something for pre-order. You can still pre-order. It's on the way. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Now, like I said, I'm going to show off the covers, the graded covers that I got for the Rippazine #5. Okay, so this is my 9.8 of the regular cover. So this is by Eiji Souza, fantastic cover. And of course, you got this signed by, actually, no, Eiji Souza is the artist for this. Gina Holland and James Frank did the cover, and I believe Andrew Rodriguez is the designer of this. So you've got absolutely fantastic condition, but that's pretty typical for these. And then, of course, you've got the collector's edition, which is Brandon Ward's cover, and this is on the inside. This, of course, is, like, nice show off of Blue Shift in his costume. Absolutely love this collector's edition. Love that they do the collector's editions. And I did get I want it all, because money was definitely a little bit better when I did this pre-order, like last summer. But I just want to show those off real quick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of the Braxcast. That's all I have for you guys, so stay tuned. 107, like I said, I'm going to be going over the Primeval statues for Isom. And then whatever happens in the next week. So I'm sure there might be some stuff with MegaCon Orlando. I will be covering that next week. So if there's any big announcements that come from that, sorry that I didn't get to it this week. Wanted to really focus on the Rippazine, what happened in that past week. But with all that said, I am out of here. Joker is out.
Thank you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.